Well, with South Africa's crucial mining Indaba taking place from the 6th to the 9th of February, it's a pleasure to welcome Ntsiki, Adonisi-Kgame, Mihlali, Sitefane from ENS Africa to the show today. And we want to unpack, what the key trends are in the industry, what are the key issues that we need to delve into and unpack, and what the mining Indaba will look at. A lot happening out there at the moment, a crucial time. We know the lights are generally out for about 8 hours a day at the moment, a little bit better lately, but it's not helping things, right? So thanks, guys. Great having you with us. And maybe just a brief intro, maybe tell us briefly about what your expectations are, from the Indaba from the 6th.
Thank you very much, Evan. So we're looking forward to the Indaba. It looks like a lot of ministers are going to be in attendance, including, of course, our minister, Gwede Mantashe. We're looking forward to seeing the ministers of Angola, Botswana, Republic of Chad, etc. And the main theme for this year's Mining Indaba is ESG. As you know, the buzzword, environmental, social, and governance, and it obviously impacts the mining industry in a big way. So looking forward to those conversations to move the industry forward and see what measures can be taken by the industry to make it more investor friendly and also good to our communities.
Absolutely. No, that's brilliant. Mihlali, just from your perspective, obviously a lot of African ministers there as well. I mean, there should be some interesting policy discussions on the boil.
Of course, certainly. I think just on a broad scope, what you'd want to look at are investor-friendly laws across the board. We're seeing a lot of African countries wanting to open up their borders for mining to assist their economies, and to see a growth in GDP specifically from the extractives industry. So we're excited to see that. And we of course, we've also had the opportunity to work on many of those pieces of legislation and contribute to make these African countries a destination for investors. So we are looking forward to seeing more of that.
As Ntsiki mentioned, we're going to have our minister there as well. He's obviously facing a lot of difficult questions at the moment. And I have to start with the elephant in the room. I mean, the power supply crunch. Do you expect to see any progress? What can we expect on that front?
Look, the power supply crisis in South Africa has affected literally every South African and every sector. And the mining industry is not exempt from the crisis. And the fact that the power supply is unpredictable makes planning around the rolling blackouts difficult. The power supply crunch will obviously affect the efficiency at which mining is being conducted and the level of output. I think recently Statistics South Africa reported that the mining output already has decreased by 9% year on year in November of 2022. So, this has a huge impact, and I suppose Gwede will have to address this issue on how we can, as the industry, quickly rectify the situation. And it's clear that the profitability of the sector will be affected negatively, which is a big thing. And I suppose this is when the renewable energy space, the ease of doing business in that sense needs to be opened up. So mining houses who have started getting their own, alternative energy supply can do so efficiently.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think that's very well put when it comes to what needs to happen and the real challenges on the ground right now. But just to get back to policy, I mean, we've got all these African ministers. I know other countries have had big Pakistan, etc. Big power problems. It's not necessarily beholden to South Africa, but when it comes to policy itself, I mean, you get a sense that we're falling a little bit too far behind even some of our peers in Africa on this front.
I'll take that, Evan. Thanks.
Sure.
I think that's debatable, and I would argue not. And maybe because I love South Africa so much. On the 30th of March, our minister published a first of its kind, an artisanal and small-scale mining policy for implementation. And this is something that many other African countries have had, and some have actually codified it into their own legislation. But in South Africa, we didn't have that, right? Because our economy had relied for the longest time on large-scale mining. And so it was a positive step to actually see the ASM policy making its way and being published for the benefit of the country. And so in that sense, I would say we're not being left behind. Of course, every regulatory regime has points that need to be, improved and debated and worked out depending on the specific context and the specific politics and objectives of government and business. And so I would be very hesitant to criticize our country on that front.
Mm. No,
and just
please.
Yes, just to add on that. So I agree with Mihlali that South Africa is not falling behind. South Africa actually has one of the most comprehensive environmental legislative framework. Mining laws are robust. And if we move this forward, I always say we have great laws, but we need to be able to implement and enforce the law. So, and that's where I would say we are lagging behind. We just need to be improve on our enforcement of our laws. Absolutely.
Yeah, and if we delve into that, like areas like small scale artisanal regularization, is spoken about, but you could probably argue it's not happening fast enough, right?
Look, these things need to be taken in, small bite sizes, understandably, because there's so many stakeholders that need to be involved. I mean, I've had the privilege to be involved in some of the stakeholder engagements around these policies and what people on the ground and what business would also want to see. And so it's quite a process to bring everyone around the table around quite a hot topic, because ASM is a hot topic because of everything that it comes with. I think that, yes, look, it's going to be a long road because we are expecting to see appropriate legislative amendments to legislation for it to be properly implemented. As it stands now, there's quite a long road ahead.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Feel free, please jump in.
Oh, yeah, no, so I was just going to add to what Mihlali was saying. To say, yes, we now have a policy, but the speed in which we're doing things, the reality on the ground is that most of the illegal mining activities happen on a daily basis. And, while we're still working on policy, we also need to work on enforcing, at least, helping with our South African police service. As we know, they don't always have the know-how to deal with the illegal miners. Just, for instance, just going underground. If you're not trained, you can't do it. So it's just we need a collaborative solution where, we work on the policy, but also on the training on the ground. To try discourage the illegal mining activities that are happening. Having said that, though, on the regulator side, if I look at the matters that we've dealt with late last year on illegal mining, they are quick to go on site and they will have the police there, to do a site inspection to check whether if illegal mining is taking place, and they found that it was taking place, and they were able to report within 2 weeks, which I thought was impressive. So baby steps, but we're getting there.
Yeah, and I think what I must say on artisanal and small-scale mining is that we must draw a distinction between, legitimate small-scale operators and zama-zamas who are illegally on the ground, and that there's actually a wonderful sector which can contribute tremendously to our mining industry, where there are honest people who are willing to do things the honest way and work with other mining companies in line with the law. And so it's always my ambition to stamp out the zama-zamas who try and overshadow those who are actually seeking to actually break into the industry and positively contribute in a lawful manner.
Yeah, I love the way you say that there's a bigger role and training, etc., with enforcement of it. And I mean, these projects also at the moment have a very strong community element to them. And there are a lot more technicalities these days in getting all of this bedded down, dealing with CPAs, land rights, traditional authorities, all of that comes into it. And maybe just give us a sense. I mean, there is also this concern that some syndicates illegally are trying to extract 30% from projects, etc. But when it comes to community involvement, it's actually quite a big theme that needs to be looked at. Probably a lot of guys not getting it quite right at the moment.
I'll take that, Ntsiki. I mean, certainly, whenever you're working with communities, you are always faced with the question of authority and who is actually representing the community, who is speaking of the community. And over and above the authority, then, like you identified, we are then looking at land entitlements, occupation, land rights, and everything that comes with that. That issue is such a broad issue that not only touches on ASM, but it also touches on bigger mining companies who are actually mining on land that is being occupied or owned by stakeholders like communities. And so that's a big theme that is going to continue, and that mining companies need to deal with. And it's really specific. It's dependent on where you're mining.
Yeah.
And who you're dealing with and your relationships. And that's why it's so important for miners to have this in mind, that it's not just about what you get out of the ground. It's also how you manage your stakeholders effectively. And that is going to benefit your business going forward in terms of limiting interruptions.
Brilliant.
Correct, Mihlali. I think, it's very important to look at the stakeholders in the mining industry, and they need to collaborate and work together. And as Mihlali said, with these communities, sometimes you have factions in the communities, which make it harder for mining companies to deal with communities, even if it's for their better good. I think the mining industry understands the social license to mine, but even where they want to do good, sometimes those are delayed by the factions on the ground.
Yeah.
I suppose moving forward is just to get our communities more organized, and have contact points where they're really represented, to move this forward.
Absolutely.
Great. No, well put. I think that's fabulous. It is definitely a big issue, a big item, and managing these things becomes so critical, because the future success hinges on getting all of this in place. And you can't have these types of disputes, etc., holding it back. But it's achievable if it's done in the right way and you understand the needs and requirements and the legalities. And just sticking with the community, though, when it comes to, I want to move on to ESG. Lastly, which is going to be a big theme at the Indaba. It is a big thing, climate change globally, etc. ESG, of course, broader than that. But communities actually does fall within that. But from an environmental perspective, do you think enough is being done to support, and uplift communities living around these mines, or still a lot more to be done?
Okay, go ahead, Mihlali.
Thanks, Ntsiki. I think it's specific. You've actually got mining companies who actually want to do the right thing. And you've got mining companies who actually put up their financial provision and who actually rehabilitate. And then you've also got some chancers who do not do that, and that ends up impacting on communities negatively. And so it's not a blanket statement for the industry as a whole. Like I said, there's people who actually make the effort and actually commit and actually fulfill their responsibilities under the law from an environmental perspective. Over to you, Ntsiki.
Thanks, Mihlali. Yeah, no, I was just going to add that, as I had said, that our environmental laws are robust, and even the amendments that are coming through will also boost the legislation, and the impacts are usually felt by host communities in these mining towns. And usually these people are vulnerable, the poor, so we have to ensure that the legislation is enforced so that these communities can continue to live in harmony with the mining companies. I think that's what we all want to see, where mining communities can also contribute in the industry, whether it's employment, whether it's servicing the mining houses, and making sure that when rehabilitation happens, the communities can use that land for other industries, whether it's agriculture or property development or whatever else. But we can only do this if we all work together. That's my take.
Brilliant. Now, of course, safety ties into a lot of this. You have deaths and you have tragedies. It affects everyone, right? Families, etc. Jagersfontein in SA recently, but in Brazil, you had as many as 270 lives lost in a tailings disaster. So, I mean, safety is going to be a big issue here. Do you expect quite a bit of discussion around improving safety?
Definitely. I think mine health and safety will always be key in the mining industry, and it's something that we can improve on. And as we digitalize, and we have, I know there's always all our jobs are in jeopardy, but I think the more mechanized our mining operations are, the better for safety reasons. Yeah. And I think it will remain a topic for the next few years.
Absolutely. And just to add there, it's going to be something that's continuous as the technology improves, and as also the regulator, stamps up on enforcement of the legislative requirements that are required from a health and safety perspective, and also from an environmental law perspective. And so it's going to take not just the mining houses, upping their game in terms of safety and technology, but also seeing the regulator actually enforce the laws that are there to protect people and their safety.
Yeah, and there's certainly exciting developments in that front, technology as well, wearable technology and such things, tracking, all of this is all going to help, with safety. And, so it's not necessarily just machines coming in and taking jobs. This is a very big theme and will be an exciting theme going forward, and very healthy for the industry. And just to, on the ESG front, anything else to look at specifically? Obviously, the green energy transition becomes very important, this move to renewables and the legislation around that. Any ESG issues that you're expecting to come through?
Certainly. Oh, go for it. I see you.
No. Mihlali, go. I'll go after you.
Okay. Definitely, I think water issues are going to be a big one from the from ESG. So looking at water security and how we utilize water, and ensuring that our limited water resource is well taken care of and not contaminated. So I think the issue of water resources and water scarcity and utilization of water as a resource is going to be one of the biggies from an ESG perspective.
And Ntsiki?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, so I suppose you've dealt with the E. The S, we've touched on it as well. On the community side, on the social side, anything that affects human rights. And I think from a mining perspective, host communities, again, is going to be a number one. How they get impacted and how mining companies, yes, ESG has been a buzzword, but there are laws that the industry needs to comply with. And I think this will be one of the bigger topics on the S side when it comes to local communities. Whether, we look at local content to ensure that the host communities can, eat, as I always say, work and live in an environment that's conducive for human beings. And as we know, it also stems out, it's a constitutional right. So I think the S in 2023 is something that we need to, it's something that we're going to be dealing with. So yeah, that's my take. And obviously, as Mihlali had said, on water management, climate change, biodiversity, looking at emissions and stuff, that will also form part of the ESG topics.
Mihlali and Ntsiki, thanks very much for taking the time. It's going to be a really important Indaba this year, one of the most important in history. So many things that we need to get right. And it looks like, I like the way that you've painted the legislative landscape, that we're getting some movement there. And as you said, just to summarize, it's about implementation now. The days of talking are over. We want to see this industry thrive. We want to see us get back to, our competitive best from a mining sector. And I think we've got everything in place, so it's just that implementation. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Evan.